Hello and welcome. So this is part two. I wasn't going to do a part two on this shifter as it's pretty much the same procedure, just mirrored as the two-speeded side. So this is the 9-speed Dura Ace 7700 shifter. We can't work completely on the mechanism as I found out in the last video, but we're going to dismantle as much as we can, and hopefully that's useful for anyone that needs to change some of these parts, such as the lever, or wants to clean or get a bit of contact inside to clean it a bit better. So let's begin. So we're going to begin, and I'll zoom in. We're going to remove that small bolt that's right here, and that's going to allow us to take off the pin that's holding the lever in place. I'm going to fast forward this as it's quite long on doing this. Now we need to remove the pin here. So I already started doing it. So you want to put something, I've put an Allen key to push against. You put it towards this side, and then here we're going to be able to zoom in properly. You can push that completely through. Well, I've managed to get some of it out. I'm going to try and get the rest using a plier. There you go. It's off. Can now take that off. So same as before, we've got the spring here. Take that off as well to clean. Covered in some sort of grease. So we're going to unscrew the two screws right here to remove off those covers. Here there's a Phillips screw to take off as well. Inside that there's a kind of spacer holder for the screw to not move off. So now we should be able to pop this cap off there, and there's a spring inside. Oh, I nearly forgot, behind here there's a, I'm going to try and reach for it. Remove it. Got it. So there you go, that and a spacer, very thin spacer. Now we need to remove, there's a lock nut and a nut just behind here. This is one of the annoying parts of this shifter, as you're going to need something fairly thin to actually lock these up properly, a bit like on a pedal. So these come off like a normal nut, counterclockwise. Okay, so I've taken one off. And then there's another underneath that. So this one's kind of funny shaped. And then underneath here there's going to be some ball bearings. We're going to grab those now because I lost mine the last time, and then it was quite difficult finding them again. It's very dirty. Here there's a Phillips screw to remove. Make sure you use the right size bit, as you risk damaging the head, taking it off. And behind here you have another Phillips screw. It's just here on the inside, behind the lever. You need to take that off. And that separates the two levers. And now you should be able to take all of this off, you might need to shimmy about. There's actually a sprocket that's blocking the removal when you're doing this. It's quite annoying. There you go, got it. Oh, that's going to be annoying to put back on. As you can see, there's this part right here that's in the way. Okay, got that off. So it's slightly different to the other one, but only a little bit. You have this part here instead. We still have a sprocket, and there's a at the back there you can see some ball bearings. Inside here there's a spring I forgot to remove. That's quite stuck. Okay, I can't even remove that. I don't know why, but it's fairly stuck inside. I'll leave it. And you'll notice here the mechanism is extremely disgusting, so well worth the clean. I'm going to get on moving with cleaning up all this, and then we're going to move on to the greasing once that's done. Everything's been cleaned now, much cleaner than it was before. In fact, I managed to get some old thread from the brake cable that had at one point gone inside the mechanism. So here we're going to put some grease. I'm going to use my Shimano grease. I think any kind of white base grease or lithium based grease will do for this. Make sure you put some on the ball bearings and all the parts where there'll be a bit of friction, a little bit on the springs, etc. Now it is looking a little bit confusing putting this back in, but I think I figured it out more or less. It's going to be fidgety and it's not going to be fun, that's for sure. Okay, so I think that the bearing actually goes on top here. It'll be easier to do it like that. Put lots here. I'm going to illustrate how to put this back in. I've actually managed to remove this spring, and there's this little hole going down on the south side. I've put it back in now. Anyway, I'm going to demonstrate how to do this now. So we have this pull of the spring, and that's going to go here. I've put some grease in it to kind of keep it stuck in place because it kept on falling off. Then you have this plate, so you have one bit that's kind of protruding over. So the smaller hole is going to go where that hole is there, and there's tiny little clips, tips here. That's where the spring, the other tip of it's going to eventually be going between. So it should be like that. Now the arm here, there's that barrel that's going to insert into the gap where that spring is, and this tip here is going to be pushing against the spring. Eventually we're going to be latching it on. Now the issue is that once we've got this installed, we cannot put the mechanism in as there's no spacing, but I'm going to try and do it that way because I can't figure out another way of doing this for the moment. So I'm going to just put that in there. Now the other tip, that spring, you're going to have to recline it and bring it up to here. So now we need to bring that here. Okay, now mine's laying flat. So this is what it's going to be like before we put the spring. You can see now it's reclining backwards. Yeah, so now I'm going to try and somehow shimmy in the mech in between here. And just to show you, so on that mech here, that bottom part there is going to be overlapping towards here where we're going to put that screw, and that gap there will be the other hole. So on the top, that will be where the kind of pivot for the where that spring is, and that's going to go through there. But as you'll see, it's quite difficult getting it all to go in. So before you do all that, make sure you have those bearings on that side. You wouldn't want to get it done and then after have to restart again. So I managed to kind of get it in like this, hooking around. The only issue there is it's stuck right there in front of this. And the reason what makes it so difficult is the with the angle is simply that after you can no longer pull that spring back once you've got this mech in. That's what makes it very difficult. I think the best thing to do is to remove the lever. So we're going to do the same procedure that we did before, except we're going to put this, make sure that that springs in properly. Put this on the top. So what I'm going to do now is put the mech in now. Once you've got this at the top, I'm going to screw this down. Hopefully I can remove it after. Now you don't want it too tight because we're going to take off anyway. But at least what it does is it's going to stop this pushing this out of the way when we're building anything. It's become very evident to me that when they were building this part here was probably not on here, so this was just sliding through really easy, and you put the lever first. So we've got to go around that somehow. So that spring pull is really in the way when we put in stuff, so I'm going to use this knife to kind of push it out of the way, push it down. That's the reason why. There you go. So that kind of gives us a little bit more room to put things in. That's a little bit in the way again. So maybe if I put out that, it's still giving me access to the spring here. And now I'm going to try and aim with the lever to bring it up to here. The other lever, insert it, and what's going to be very difficult, but I cannot think of another way. We're going to somehow push that towards here. So as a reminder, this little bit here is where the spring is going to be pushing up against. This part needs to go. There's basically a gap in between here somewhere, and it's basically going into it. Let me see if I can spot that. Yeah, it's right here. There's that gap, and that bit kind of seats in there. So I've inserted that part into that hole, like I was saying, and hopefully we're going to aim for that lever tip there. It's going to insert into here, into the gap where there's that spring. I've got to do everything while moving the mechanism towards there at the same time. So right there, that spring's getting in the way again. Okay, so now I've kind of turned this around. Now we need to somehow unscrew that screw. I'm going to try and flicker that spring onto this lever behind here somehow. That's going to be very tricky. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that on camera. So what I'm using is a little Allen key. I'm hoping I'm going to go behind here and just push it as hard as I can, and hopefully it will snap into at least get behind here where I need it to go. I'm hoping by now I'm going to be able to take that screw off. So move that out of the way. So now we can take that off. 3 days later, I've managed to get this back together again. The big issue was the tiny little spring that was located here for this lever. So you could not install this lever first and recline that tiny little spring back onto its tab, the return spring, because then after you would not be able to put the mech in. So it meant that you had to kind of put all of this in without getting that tip of that return spring back onto the tab. And then what I did after was I moved this backwards a little bit, maybe 2 millimeters space, and then using a Allen key on the side I managed to push the spring towards this way, and then after just catch it with the pick tool and just holding it, suddenly everything pushed in and I was able to, well, everything was put back, and then obviously the spring got onto the tab in the right place. And I can tell you now, I had many attempts before I achieved that. I tried all sorts of different tricks and it just did not work. That was the only method I could think of. Now obviously originally this part here is put in afterwards, but since I tried to remove the screw as well, I could not get it off either. So yeah, avoid undoing this unless you really need to. So here there's some bearings. I'm gonna lay those flat, just put some grease on it, a little bit of grease. And then there's a screw right here. We then have this cone nut. So this is the next fun process in our endeavor on this shifter. We're going to need to somehow tighten these like I did last time. Oh, by the way, it's a number 9 here, so if you have something that's, I don't know, this thin, that can fit onto that, then you'll be able to adjust this correctly. I'm going to have to do it the hard way. So put that back on. So last time I just simply tightened back and forth until they kind of locked in place. So grab the this plastic hood, and there's a hole here at the back where the other tip of that spring's going to go, that was facing towards us. So I'm going to insert that now. To get this to go in a bit better, what we're going to do is we're going to put the tip back here in the hole of that plastic holder, and then using a plier we're going to recline this already beforehand. And I'm going to make sure it lays flat inside, because we don't want this spring to overlap, as it's going to create a gap then when we're going to install it. Get the spacer and that square nut. Make sure that's on the top here, and that's going to eventually insert into the square part of the plastic hood here. So now we put that tip into the hole right here. And once that's inserted, we're going to twist this around. And you want those teeth to be there, nicely inserted. I'm going to check. Yeah, the square part looks like it's inserted in, and everything seems to be quite laying flat. Okay, so now we're going to take the washer with this special spacer that stops the screw from coming off. I don't know what that's called. Can't remember the name of it. And then we put this screw. Now I'm guessing we don't want that too tight. You can always check to see if you can shift, if it's not too hard. And mine looks okay. Yeah. Okay. We can now put that plastic cover back on, and there's a screw that goes inside to hold it in place. I'm going to put that in now before I forget. We then have the, what's this called again? Well, the front cover with the Dura Ace. These are very often broken and scratched. And there's a little screw there. Right, now we can put the rest back in. So we have this spring. This is one tip of the spring that's going towards the other way or the other side, and it goes into the hole here and overlaps that bushing. So hopefully this is like the one I put on previously, and I won't have to do anything special. Yeah, it looks like it's that. Thank God. I don't want to do that again. So what we're going to need to do is line up all of this, we're pushing down, and then we can insert that pin. Yeah. So the pin is going to go into, it's going to go like this in this direction, and I believe that groove here is where the screw somehow holds it in place. What a relief, I'm getting to the end of this. We can now put that screw. I'll fast forward this until I screw it down. Okay, finally got there in the end. It sounds like it's clicking better now that I cleaned it. I didn't think this was going to be so difficult. So yeah, lessons to be learned. Don't go further than where I showed you to undo, essentially removing this lever. You're then stuck and you're going to be playing around with that for a very long time. Unless you need to, obviously. So thank you for listening, and I hope this helped you in some way. And until next time, peace out.